So, I have Kat and Paul with me, and we've just been watching Fire Ants. Who's going to tell us about where the idea came from, and obviously, as far as a lockdown short goes, it's definitely something very different, and it's definitely something very ambitious. Tell us more.
So, as you all know, when lockdown happened, as a family, like everybody else, we just didn't know what to make of it. We took a month off to process it, and it was one of the most peaceful months of my life because there was no stress, no emails, the world stopped, so it was fantastic. And we've enjoyed that month, but in April, end of April, we started getting a little bit bored. And as an artist, it's our nature to be restless all the time. So we were talking and we were thinking, imagine if things go worse. I mean, the kids were worrying and saying, what do we do? I mean, these are our children. So one came back from uni and the other one was off school. And it was like, what do we do? So we thought, why don't we just make a short home video for fun? And it was a home video, was what you saw. And it was never meant to be a festival film. So we say, let's make something that maybe, God knows when the world what happens, but in 10 years' time, maybe we can look back at it and just enjoy it. And let's make it a little bit OTT for fun. So it gave us a purpose, and Paul and I drafted the script. There wasn't really a script, but there was a storyline that this is what's going to happen. And we started shooting around, as you can see in the house, doing everything. But then we needed extra kids. So I posted on Facebook, my friends, that any kid that's bored and wants to join a virtual production, just give us an inbox message. And that's when things become a little bit crazy, because I didn't get one, but I got hundreds. And from people that you want to take part in this film. It's shot in Canterbury and it's online, and you have to go to your lockdown city at night time or dressed in black with your phone and act. That was the pitch. So you can imagine that a lot of kids locked in their houses all over the world, literally from India to Mexico to Australia, America. They were like, can I be? So what you saw is literally 1/3 of the kids that applied, and which I directed over Zoom or FaceTime in the lockdown cities. We couldn't include everything. And of course we adapted the script to include it, because initially it was to be in England, but we adapted it to make it international, so we've got all these kids all over the world. And then on the back of that, I've approached some actors, all online. And the people that you see close by is done with long lenses, it's done with remote focus. So we would have this social distancing that was required at the time. So the whole thing was shot the first next 2 months of lockdown. So by the summer we had all the footage, and then it took us pretty much a year, or less than a year.
Well, working part-time.
Yeah, working part-time on it for the visual effects and all that to come to fruition. So that's the story behind it.
I mean, for a home project, I'm sure our audience will agree that was like pretty vast. You've got some amazing visuals in there. I really liked, the graphics at the end, which is obviously your area, Paul. As we moved, from country to country to the end, and we've got the helicopters flying over. How long does it take to put those visuals together?
I guess it's quite difficult, really, because it's done in dribs and drabs in between work. Never enough time. They all need another couple of weeks each, at least, and that's always the way. You just abandon something at some point. But I would guess probably maybe 4 or 5 months worth just working part-time. And using what resources we had access to, what we could borrow, what stock we could buy, and just integrate it all.
And many of our audience will have noticed the nice cameos that pop up through the talking heads. How did you lure them to the project?
Jane Asher and Hugh Horsey. I've done a film before with Jane Asher, and we became good friends. So it was, she says, God sent, because she was locked in a cottage in the countryside, and she couldn't see anybody. So after that, she said that, yeah, if you want anybody, just let me know. And I said, I would love Hugh Horsey. She rang him up, and she says, yeah, he's in. So it was the right time to approach people, because everybody was at home, a little bit bored. So we were lucky in that sense.
It's so some of you may remember that 2 years ago you were with us with One Track Mind, which saw Jane Asher in a very much different mode.
Yes.
It's quite interesting because, I mean, by contrast, she's quite restrained in this, isn't it? How difficult is it to? I know it sounds silly because, I mean, it's lots of conversations, which is actually quite easy to record, but how easy is it to get exactly what you want from people when you're dealing over Zoom, when you're, you know, directing over Zoom? Because it's actually quite a challenge, isn't it? Because there's not that, it's a different level of interaction.
True, it is, but you prepare. Because you don't have in front of them for direct feedback, you do a lot of preparation. So you tell them, particularly, this is your character, this is how I want you to play. We do a lot of rehearsals. I insist on rehearsals, even from Zoom, because everybody feels, 45-minute Zoom, so everybody feels that they know clearly what's expected of them. They were very happy to do many takes. So I suppose it's how you deal with all the actors, whether it's a Zoom or whether it's not Zoom. It's sort of like, this is how I work with preparation, rehearsals, and when the cameras are rolling, you know exactly the range where you can be. You can improvise on the spot if you feel like, but this is the range that we want. So it seemed to have worked.
I was going to say that I think they all enjoy doing their own set design. You know, Hugh and Tim printing out sort of government logos, sticking them on their spare rooms. And also some of the kids were pre-recorded, so those acting against the kids weren't acting live, so that was quite a challenge for them as well. It shows how well they did.
Yeah, the computer ones were not live, so it was timed. So Rafi had to time specifically where the dialogue would be. That was not easy.
Wearing your acting hat.
Yeah. Oh my God, no.
It's quite difficult to tell a story really without using dialogue, isn't it? You spent a lot of the film looking just thoroughly miserable.
Yeah.
How did you get into that mindset?
I didn't want to. I hated it because
Yeah.
I am not an actress, and certainly not a drama actress. So I was looking for neighbours. Could you mind? But we couldn't. We had to. So initially I said nobody's going to watch the film, so I might as well. Just play that. I didn't want to listen to my voice, so I said I'll play a selective, not mute, but somebody that is so depressed that she finds it very hard to even utter a word of thank you. So it worked well in some areas, but I think it made it was contrasted with the whole energy of the kids talking, and to have the mother like that was, I think, quite necessary.
Do we have some questions out here?
I know Spencer said it about, at least one other film in this year's festival, about the Hollywood quality of that film. And it makes me wonder how they managed to spend millions on them when you've managed to do that from your home. There it was very tedious and domestic, which is obviously what you were trying to create, and it suddenly bursts into this global, huge thing. I was quite surprised to hear that they were actually genuine children filming themselves in their cities, because all the quality of the film looked exactly the same. And while I'm not a technical filmmaker, I would have thought that coming from different mobile phones, there would have been a different quality in the film, but it all looks very synced. And also you talked about buying resources. Does that account for things like the big panoramic shot after the helicopter, which again looks like something completely out of a Hollywood movie?
We would buy stock photos, stock footage, and rebuild environments so that we could fly the helicopters through them, or in some cases we would shoot the backgrounds ourselves and just work with it that way. So yeah, the only thing that we bought was really music, sound effects, and some stock photos and some stock footage. So some of the backgrounds of the cities when they're empty, that was all from stock. We couldn't go out and shoot them, otherwise we normally would.
Do we have any other questions out here? One quick one for you. I don't know if there is another one out there. Can you sort of elaborate on rebuilding environments for those that are a little unsure what that means?
Yeah, I mean, something like there's a scene when Rafi's running up at a university, local university, and so what we did was we went up there with a small camera, we shot him, and then we used the footage from the camera to remap onto geometry that we could actually reproject and build a virtual environment, which we could then integrate the helicopters, and also make sure that all of the volumetrics, the smoke and the dust and things actually interact properly with the environment. Or sometimes we would actually, there's a shot with some smoke coming through two buildings. So that was some stock footage of a drone flying through some glass buildings, and we rebuilt the buildings so that we could build the smoke and the volumetrics and get that reflected properly in the glass. So sort of recreating what's there.
I definitely admire your talent because there was, a whole level of realism there that really shines through on the screen. And it's amazing how much more spectacular it looks on a massive screen like this than, our judges when they were watching it previously. We are going to have to wrap on this. However, we are going to get you to go on to Nerdly with Kevin and do a more in-depth interview. And hopefully this will help to bring us back on time. And I apologise for the rushed Q&A. We are now going to proceed with our next two films with a Q&A straight after.